Evening, everyone. I'm Carrie Coogan. I'm Deputy Director of Community Engagement and Public Affairs for the Kansas City Public Library, and thank you all so much for being here tonight. I also want to thank all of our viewers who are watching on the library YouTube channel, and we will have Q&A for this program, and we also would like to have your questions, and you can submit them via the chat. So, we're glad to have you here for the next installment of our Civil Dialogue series presented in partnership with the Kinder Institute for Constitutional Democracy at the University of Missouri. Woo! I want to extend or ask Karen Grinch to please stand up. She is with the Kinder Institute and makes everything happen there, and we're just so grateful for her. In a time when conversations can feel louder and more divided, gatherings like this remind us the power of listening, the power of empathy and understanding. And that's what libraries are all about, connecting people and ideas and creating space for community and for conversation. You'll notice on the screens right here that we have a QR code, and we ask you to please take a moment before and also after tonight's program. We're doing a survey pre-program and then post-program as a way to understand from you all about this work and ways that we can do it better. And now to get started, it's my pleasure to welcome Jean Becker, who will introduce Linda Lorelle and our wonderful panelists. Thank you again for being part of this wonderful conversation and supporting Civil Dialogues. Thanks.
Thank you for coming out tonight. I'm just going to tell you up front, I'm feeling a little disconnected tonight because I keep going off in cul-de-sacs of different conversations. So if I get off track, Linda's going to stand up and say, Jean, wrong topic. I'll just be honest, I'm trying to help Dick Cheney's staff with his funeral. So if I finally start saying, Brian Jones is willing to volunteer at Dick Cheney's funeral, I was like, oop, wrong page. I've been in Missouri since Saturday, and I did some deep thinking on Friday about what I wanted to say tonight. And this is how fast our life changes. When I wrote this Friday, this was my opening comment. Given the political and social divisiveness in our country right now, I'm thinking maybe we should just talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and how they have come roaring back after a slow start. Never mind. And sometimes I think that's part of our problem right now with having civil dialogue is that things happen so fast and are coming at us so fast. I don't think there's anyone among us who is not struggling with having civil dialogue right now. I'm going to tell a story on me. So I was one of Barbara Bush's deputy press secretaries when she was First Lady of the United States, and my office was in the East Wing. A moment of silence. Okay. So I'm very good friends with Jamie Gangel, who's a CNN reporter, and she called me a couple weeks ago and she said, would you be willing to come on CNN and talk about how you feel about the East Wing being demolished? And I said, yes, I would be happy to do that. But you and your producer need to know that every other word I will say about this will be the F word. I think Jay Sexton's terrified I'm going to launch into exactly what I said to her, but every other word was the F word. And I said, does that work for you, Jamie? And she took a deep breath and she said, do you know any other East Wingers who might be willing to come on CNN? So yes, I also need civil dialogue training. We all need to figure out how to talk to each other, and more importantly, how to listen to each other, and how to disagree with each other without shouting, without belittling, and worse, as we've seen, pulling out a gun and shooting someone. We can do better. We must do better. One of my new favorite people is a Republican governor of Utah, Spencer Cox. I don't know if you've been paying attention to him, but he is, I think, a rising leader. And he recently said in a 60 Minutes interview that it is not hyperbole to say the future of our country is at stake. As head of the National Governors Association, that he founded something called Disagree Better. and 26 governors have signed up to appear with him all over the country to talk about having civil dialogue. Linda and I are actually in conversation with the person who runs Disagree Better. They want to partner with us on doing some events. If you were here in July, I've already have showed you this photo, but I'm going to show this photo to you again. And once again, can we make it a little, can we make it smaller? You can't see President Clinton, who's doing all the talking as usual. And once again, yes, I'm embarrassed that there's a person that appears to look like me at the back of that photo who appears to be photobombing the presidents. I don't know who she is. But this is actually at Texas A&M. This is after Hurricane Harvey dumped 40 inches of rain on Houston in 48 hours. And these 5 presidents came together to raise money for Hurricane Harvey relief. You see 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans. There's a wonderful camaraderie. There's a wonderful friendship. Do they agree politically? No. Do they like each other? Yes. And they came together a lot for a good cause. This is who we are. And this is what we have to get back to. And this is one of the purposes of civic dialogue, is to try to help all Americans who are struggling with talking to their family and to their neighbors, that you don't have to agree on everything. You need to agree to disagree, but you can also be friends. I told you this in July, I'm going to tell you again. One of my favorite things about this photo is President Bush used to get teased about his friendship with President Clinton, and by some of his very conservative friends, and he would always say the same thing: I love Bill. And one thing I love about him is I'm old, and I've run out of things to say. And I never have to worry about that with Bill, because he does all the talking all the time. I want you to see who's doing the talking, and that they're all listening to Bill Clinton, which I think is rather hysterical. So this is another addition to my talks that I thought of yesterday when Vice President Cheney died. He, of course, was the first President Bush's Secretary of Defense. And the definitive biography of my former boss, the George Herbert Walker Bush, was written by Pulitzer Prize-winning historian, author John Meacham. And in that book, President Bush was rather critical of his Dick Cheney. He thought he was a brilliant Secretary of Defense, but he disagreed with some of the advice he had given his son when he was his son's vice president, particularly to do with Iraq. And in John Meacham's book, he actually called Dick Cheney a hard ass. He said Dick Cheney was a bit of a hard ass, and I sort of disagree with some of what he said. And John Meacham was so classy about this, he actually said to President Bush, okay, is this what you want to say? And President Bush said, yeah, that's what I want to say. Well, the book came out, and that was the line that became huge news. It was everywhere. I still remember Chuck Todd on Meet the Press saying, I wouldn't want to be at the Bush family Thanksgiving dinner this year because this is not going to be easy. So I tell President Bush what was going on in the news, and he says, get Dick Cheney on the phone. I'm like, what? You really want to call? He said, get Dick on the phone. So he calls him, and he said, Dick, I called you a hard ass. In John Meacham's book, I meant it. You were a hard ass, but I love you, I respect you, you're one of my best friends. You were a hard ass. I'm not going to take it back, but I just want you to know I love you. And he had Dick Cheney on voicemail, and Dick Cheney said, Mr. President, my grandchildren already have sweatshirts printed up with the word hard ass on them. They think this is the biggest compliment that anyone has ever given me. He said, I know we disagree on this, I love you too. Now that's civil dialogue. And again, not to make an example of anyone, Dick Cheney didn't go on social media and say, who the hell does, they didn't go on social media and go back and forth. President Bush picked up the phone and called him. He said, you are a hard ass, but I love you. And it's just a great, I've been thinking about that for the last 24 hours. So it's time for me to introduce my partner in crime, Linda Lorelle. In case this is your first civil dialogue event, Linda is an Emmy Award-winning journalist who anchored the NBC channel in Houston for 17 years. And now we're partners in crime on Civic Dialogues. I'm going to ask her to come on up and do the panel. But while she has such a short walk, I was going to tell you something while she walked up here. We were talking about this afternoon, and this is sort of a perfect segue. Another great example, like that photo, like President Bush calling Dick Cheney. Marjorie Taylor Greene was on The View yesterday. Oh my God. And if you don't know who Marjorie Taylor Greene is or what The View is, see us afterwards. But it isn't anything you would ever think we would see in our lifetime. And on that note, I'm going to hand the baton over to Linda.
Thank you, Jean. I'd love, gosh, I could listen to your stories all day, every day, and they're always perfect. They're always right on the money, and they help provide I think the context that we so often forget and that we really need, especially in this moment. And so speaking of Marjorie Taylor Greene, I just gotta say, if she and the ladies of The View can have a civil conversation, then there's hope for all of us, okay? Just saying. And if Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush could go from bitter enemies to cherished friends, so much so that Jean literally held a sobbing Bill Clinton in her arms at President Bush's funeral. So if that can happen, there is hope for all of us. It's time to stop fighting. We have to stop fighting. We have to start listening. We also have to do something. Each one of us has to decide what we are going to do as individuals to make a positive difference and a positive impact on our communities. Because at the end of the day, we have to remind ourselves of our shared humanity and our shared love of country. You all have taken the first step just by being here tonight. Those of you here in the room, those of you who are online watching on YouTube, thank you. Thank you for engaging with us. By the time you leave this evening, we hope that you will feel better equipped to engage with those on the other side of your beliefs, and that you will feel motivated to do at least one thing to help improve our world, whatever that might be, for you to make a positive difference in your community and remind us what we love about America and its promise. So much of our promise lies in the hands of our young people. They are inheriting a profoundly troubled world, but in talking with them and listening to them, I am constantly encouraged that they are more than up to the task. Two of our panelists this evening will help you understand why there is reason to hope and how we can learn from their example. Anna Chellis is an honors student studying political science at the University of Missouri-Columbia. She is the president and founder of Mizzou's chapter of Bridge USA. Bridge USA is a multi-partisan student movement that champions viewpoint diversity, responsible discourse, and a solution-oriented political culture. When it comes to political division, Anna is passionate about bringing students together through open, respectful conversation and helping others better understand perspectives from the other side. Please welcome Anna Chellis. Brooke Taylor is a third-year undergraduate student at the University of Missouri-Columbia studying constitutional democracy, political science, economics, law, and history. Girl, you need to get a life. I mean, come on, you are such a slacker. I don't even know. Okay. She is the vice president of the Mizzou chapter of Bridge USA. And by the way, there are currently 108 Bridge USA chapters on college campuses across the country. Brooke and Anna together are going to help us understand more of how Bridge operates and what we can all learn. Brooke Taylor, please welcome her. John Gable is co-founder and CEO of All Sides Technologies, a company that helps people better understand the world and each other. That includes balanced news and bias ratings at allsides.com, civil dialogue across differences for anyone, and sophisticated services for small to huge organizations that want better relationships and better decision-making. John served on the original teams for Microsoft Office and Mozilla at Netscape, among other tech startups and companies. In a previous life, he was a professional political campaigner in the 1980s when he worked in a variety of local and national campaigns, and also for the Republican National Committee. John is a dear friend whom I've gotten to know over the last several years. The first time we were doing a panel about civil dialogue, not under this umbrella, but something else. And when I pick up the phone and ask if he will call, unless he's doing something else, the answer is yes. He flew in from San Francisco to be here with us tonight. So please welcome John Gable. And last but certainly not least, Jay Sexton is director of Mizzou's Kinder Institute on Constitutional Democracy, a nonpartisan center for the teaching and study of the founding and history of the United States. In his classes, students explore how the fate of American constitutional democracy has always been inseparable from the global fortunes of democracy. He has learned much about how to navigate tribal hatred by virtue of being a KU alum who lives and breathes Jayhawk basketball, but lives and works in Columbia, Missouri. And he says he takes booze from Tiger Faithful in good spirits. Jay always gives us such incredible historical perspective, and we are so blessed and honored to have him here with us tonight. Jay, thank you, Jay Sexton. Okay, time for us to start talking. So, there was an election yesterday, and there was. And I'm going to start with John because, yes, because, and those of you who've been to our other panel discussions here in Kansas City and maybe other places, I'm always telling audiences about all sides because people often ask, where should I get my news and information that I can trust? And I don't know, the trust in media is at an all-time low. So that's a conversation that we will get into a little bit. But I always tell people about all sides because it's a place where you can go and get the same news story from the left, the right, and the center. And then you can make up your own mind about where you think the truth lies. And there's also media bias ratings. So John, from that perspective, I want to know what you saw on your site this morning. What was the reaction to the election, and what are people saying, and how is it being covered?
Yeah, admittedly, my first thought was, okay, here's the circus. Because you have the left and the right saying all the things you expect them to say. The right, it's just, these are blue states, and this is always happens after a presidential election once, and that's true. And then you had the left saying, well, it happened a lot bigger, and there are lots of problems, and this shows a wind, and that's true as well. And I feel like I'm the historian here. I'm kind of less interested about the blips than I am in the kind of the big picture, because the big picture is what we live in. I mean, the blips are what they tell you to think about right now. Oh my God, what happened yesterday? Everything's changed. Breathe deeply. It's okay. If you're happy about it or sad about it or you're terrified about gerrymandering becoming something's normal. I mean, in the 80s, I worked hard against gerrymandering, way back in the 80s. Before they had these incredible computer models, there were 2 districts in California. One had like 97 different edges to it, and another one was only contiguous, one body at low tide. At high tide, it split in 2. And this is before we got good at technology. And so the ability to basically rob people the opportunity to choose who elects them, but choose the voters, that bothers me in any party in every way. I'm zealous about that concern. I actually think it's good that we have waves a little bit, that when one side gets carried away, the other side does better, and I think you need that balance. And so depending on who you are, there are some things that have happened actually good in the last year or so with some control over the border, and some things that were bad, that went way overboard. And so, but you may be completely all good, completely all bad, or everything that was good must have been an accident. They couldn't possibly meant that to happen. Or anything that was bad was just, that's temporary. I mean, everybody has their own narratives that they live, and all those narratives are suspect, or at least partially true. But what I'm interested in is kind of where we come out after it. So it's a little bit too early to see what's going to come out. And yes, the news is kind of predictable. The folks on the left, there was MSNBC on the hotel this morning that I was sitting in, and it was like everybody in this room can predict what they were saying about it. And you could almost predict what the Fox was saying about it. It's kind of not that surprising. So let's just give it time. And let us work through these ups and downs, and let us get to a good place. So DC is always the last place to understand what's really going on. And it's really up to us to show them that stories like Jean shares, that we can actually focus on solutions, which is what Bridge USA focuses on. And once enough of us do that, once enough of us talk to people who we think are nuts, but listen, truly listen, to understand. Once enough of that's happening, then you start seeing changes in DC. Until then, it's just going to be more partisan warfare that goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
And I'm glad you said the listen to understand piece, because I know that's what you guys do at Bridge USA. So Anna, why don't you start and maybe tell the audience a little bit more about Bridge and how it operates. And I'm really curious to know what was the chatter on campus today, especially among your group.
Okay, so for starters, Bridge Mizzou, that's our chapter of Bridge USA, at the beginning of every single one of our meetings, which each meeting has a different topic. So we actually have one going on like right now. We're not there, but they're all discussing about the government shutdown right now. And what would have happened at the beginning of this meeting is we give background information about the government shutdown, what Democrats are saying about it, what Republicans are saying about it. We give news sources from both sides that kind of gives a summary about what's really going on. And then before we dive into the discussion, we lay out some ground rules before we start talking. And one of them is listen to understand, not listen to respond. So we want to go into this with the intent of curiosity, and that's one of our core values. But we've seen on campus, I mean, the most source that people our age use their voices is on social media. And so I don't know what you've seen, but I've seen people posting like, oh, I'm moving to New York, I'm moving to Virginia, or I'm moving out of those states, or the rap video you don't know what that is?
I haven't seen this.
Well, yeah, our generation can find anything online, so but you can look into that later. But we take all of these opinions and we offer a space for diverse viewpoints to come together and really understand the other side from a point of curiosity and not a point of assumption.
So, okay, just not to leave everybody hanging, the rap video that she's referring to was Mamdani back in the day.
Oh, that one. Okay.
That one.
Yeah.
So we are familiar.
Yeah. Okay. So, Brooke, what were you hearing on campus today, and what have been your thoughts over the last 24 hours?
Well, at Bridge Mizzou, we're very aware that the loudest voices are the ones that garner the most attention on social media. So we're very careful to create an open space within our meetings so that we get those more quiet opinions and really hear the side that we are not used to being open to online.
Yeah.
So online we hear a lot of, oh, blue wave, only Democrats care about voting and that's why they won. But we get to actually garner the real on the ground opinions of young people within our meetings. And so we've had our government shutdown meeting, and it's honestly, it's very unsuspected to hear the
nuanced opinions behind everything. Well, because with the algorithm, well, social media is such a big deal for our generation, but at the same time, we tend to follow people who we agree with, and it's really easy to get stuck in those echo chambers of re-listening to the same voices that you hear over and over again. And it's really easy to post your beliefs online and to disagree with people online. but it takes a lot to come and do that in person. And that's another thing that we acknowledge at the beginning of our meetings. Like we acknowledge that you have to have some level of bravery in order to come and share your beliefs with other people, because you know there's going to be disagreement. And that also speaks to a point of vulnerability. You have to be able to know that, like, maybe you don't know everything. Maybe someone else has more information about this topic that you didn't have before. Maybe you learned something new. But these are all things that we just tell our members to keep in mind at the beginning of our meetings so that we can go into this with an open mind.
Yeah. So we're gonna come back and explore a little bit more of that, especially about the silos, and I'm gonna bring John into that piece of the conversation. But Jay, I wanna get you in this conversation to talk about it more from a high level perspective, in terms of not only, you know, what happened in the election yesterday, but what should we be thinking about? You know, John says let's let the dust settle a little bit to see kind of, you know, where the balance is, if we can ever get to some sort of balance. What is it that we need to be thinking about that we can take some sort of solace in to help us believe that we are going to get through this moment without, you know, really hurting each other in ways that we can't take back?
Linda's setting the bar high. She wants me to give a high take on this. I'll start with the low, like everyday take about how I experienced the elections yesterday. Was that my old college buddies and I have a text strand. There's probably a name for that. A chat. A chat. And in essence,
they're laughing. They are over there laughing.
In essence, we only ever do this. We only ever text during the Chiefs games, and talking about, and our emotions go up and down in the Chiefs games. But it kind of got activated during the election last night, and it made me think. It made me think about how we experience politics, and in this day and age, how we experience politics as a roller coaster, up and down. Your team's winning, then your team's losing. Isn't actually unique to politics. It's how we experience a lot of civic and public life. When I teach the 19th century and the origins of American democracy, always talk about how evangelical religion is the basis for how the culture of politics unfolds. I think in our era, it's actually sports would be the thing that's most connected to politics. So that's just one point to think, you know, we're not experiencing politics in a vacuum. The other thing I'd say about the actual election results and everything last night is the pendulum in our era swings back and forth. It's swinging back and forth quicker than, like, in a macro historical view. It used to go slow, and one party would rule for a decade, and then you go back. It's going back and forth quicker, and the margins are getting narrower and narrower and narrower.
Why is that?
It's because the political parties are so adept at creating their own voters through gerrymandering and their own messaging, like micro-targeting of voters with ads and so forth, that they're just getting really good at what they do. They're like two teams that every time they're going to play, they're going to battle it out to the end of the fourth quarter. And I think we're just in this cycle right now. Until one of the two parties can find a way to break out of it and to reach a broader, wider constituency. Last point is sure many of you saw the poll in the New York Times about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the question was, what's the biggest problem facing our country today? No surprise, always the answer to that is the economy, and that was the answer. But I believe number 2 was political partisan divisions. That was like the second-rated problem, and that is such an opportunity for the political parties. If one of them can really take advantage of that, they can get out of this pendulum cycle.
Yeah. So the question is, you know, how? I mean, I don't see how it's going to happen. John, when talking about that, and I know the media, the information ecosystem has a lot to do with why we are where we are. How do we get out of the silos? How do we get to the point where, you know, one of the political parties or both of them or whatever is able to break the cycle that we're in when we are operating from different sets of facts, depending on where you get your news from? And that's a real problem.
Well, with the historian next to me, I feel like Winston Churchill has this great quote, where it's like, America always does the right thing after it tries everything else. And we've been in the trying everything else for the last few years, which has been kind of bumpy. I do think that it is not going to happen in DC. It's going to happen outside of DC. And then people in DC will see the change and go running in front of me and go, woohoo, follow me. Even though they didn't really start it. And that's normally how change, I think, happens. And you study it, or I talk to people who know history better than I do, that's what they say. And in my mind, there are things that are a little different here. So in the technology, when it changes, the way human beings interact with each other and as a society changes. Now, if you think about us like a species, like Sapiens, I love that book, you see that the way we communicate and socialize really drives a great deal. And yes, I'm proud of what I did with Netscape with like, you know, very popular, early popular web browser. But I thought back then that it might train us to discriminate against each other in new ways because the way the information would flow, that we would tend to think in terms of stereotypes because there's just so much you have to kind of put it in categories. And that stereotypes is kind of the precursor to any kinds of discrimination, division on whatever it happens to be. And that got a lot worse than I ever thought. I never imagined the business models or other things. And so I feel like we're kind of, it's like, I used this analogy with you before, Linda. I think it's kind of like looking at an addict. So when you see somebody who has an addiction problem, at first they're in denial, or they don't recognize there's a problem. And that was us 10, 15 years ago. When we started All Sides, I'd go around telling people about the problems of division. There was like, yeah, I'd have half an hour, 25 minutes, give them the data, and they'd go, well, maybe, fine, go enjoy your little academic project. Then at some point, people were like, oh, this is a problem. And so then if I spent more than 5 minutes or 30 seconds saying there's a problem, they were like, yeah, we know it's a problem. But then we did kind of what an addict does. Their first solution is kind of stupid. Well, I'll just start drinking. I won't drink before noon. And then I'll control it and I'll be fine. And so that's kind of what we've been doing. It's like the problem with division is it's their fault. Yeah. Or it's their fault. That's the same thing as an addict saying, well, I'll just drink less. I mean, I'll still be right. I'm good. I can do it. But they're the ones who are a problem. And it's just that there was so much pressure that day. It's not my fault that I did these things. I mean, it's difficult. I think now we're getting serious about it. As a society, we're getting serious about it. And I see great opportunity in this. And and people, when I come do these things and describe the opportunity I see, they're like, are you on drugs? Are you nuts? When you look at what's going on. But it's kind of like watching an addict go through these difficult stages. It gets really bad before it gets better. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how bad it gets before it gets better. And I will say we're not guaranteed it's going to get better. I think that's up to us. It's up to you all. I think it's up to everybody in this room to get it better. And I can describe how we can do that. But I want to set the stage kind of historically that I think we are at that moment.
So, okay, I want to come back to how we do that, but I want to hear Brooke and Anna tell us what they think about how we should do it. And Brooke, I don't know if maybe you guys could give us an example of a time in your Bridge Mizzou chapter where you've been on opposite ends of a discussion about something. Can you share something like that with us and then tell us how you resolved it? Brooke?
So currently, on the write-up, we chit-chatted about what we thought exactly fixes for this issue of polarization would be, and Anna's kind of given our two answers away. It was curiosity for me. I think that people get so closed-minded about hearing other opinions that we have lost a sense of curiosity for other people's opinions. And then Anna's, what was yours?
Vulnerability. I mean, vulnerability and bravery go hand in hand. You have to kind of acknowledge that you might not know everything, which I said earlier, but also just with your curiosity virtue. I think we've started to care less about the people on the other side. We don't really try to understand as much of their issues and why they hold their specific beliefs. And I think as soon as we start getting to understand the experiences that have led them to these views. We're going to understand the person better, and we're going to have a better sense of humanity. But both of those things go hand in hand. I think you have to have that sense of vulnerability and curiosity.
Can you give an example of something actually that happened, like in your chapter when something happened?
And so Anna and I today, we were deciding on a topic that we disagreed upon, and we hit a lot. But the big one recently is the government shutdown, and we came to an impasse on what we believe would be the fix to get out of this, and who we think should either back down or step up. And it was my idea that the subsidies need to be accepted into the budget, and that's where Anna and I found our impasse.
Yeah, as I was doing research on the background and both sides of the government shutdown for the Bridge Mizzou meeting tonight, I saw the other perspective that I didn't necessarily like, or the party that I align with didn't necessarily agree with. But I was like, they kind of got a point, because why are we putting these long-lasting ideas into something that needs to be fixed like right now? Like, maybe we should take more time to think about that. But this is just like one example. There's so many nuances to every single political topic, and finding those nuances, finding those small things that we agree with each other about, and the small things that we disagree with, it's just so humanizing. Like, it really puts into perspective that you do not have to agree with your party 24/7 all the time, or extremely. But at the same time, our organization does not push you to be a moderate. We really just want you to understand the other side and consider those ideas, consider those beliefs.
So what got you to that point? So you went into this conversation believing what you believe, and you believing what you believe. But Anna, at some point you said, they might have a point. What got you there? What happened to get you there?
I think I just read it. I read it and I was like, yeah.
You informed yourself and you opened your mind.
Yeah, I informed myself on all sides, because that's what I have to do. I'm the president of Bridge. I don't want to come across as supporting one idea more than the other. Even though I do have my own beliefs, I don't want to discredit anybody else's opinions.
So Brooke, what gets you to that same point where you're able to open your mind and hear the opposing point of view and give credence to it?
I don't know what it is inside of me that likes to argue both sides, but it comes out very hard when I go back home and talk politics with my family, and they kind of scratch their heads and say, what party does she align with? Because she's arguing for everybody. So it's really the fact that I would like to be as informed as humanly possible. I know that that's not achievable because not everybody knows everything, and I accept that. But I would like to be able to argue for any person, and maybe that's the aspiring lawyer inside of me.
And the other thing that I think we both just kind of keep in the back of our heads is that it is impossible for the entire other side to be stupid or not know what they're doing or to be bad people. Like, that's just not how it is. Like, you really have to understand that these people are also making an effort to make a good impact on their constituents. Like, this is their overarching goal, and it's our overarching goal too. So.
You see why they give me hope? Do you see why I said that, right? Yeah, you guys are amazing. So, I mean, Jay, when you hear students talk like this, what does it do for you as a professor, as somebody who understands sort of the historical trajectory and other things that we've overcome as a country? Even though we might feel that in this moment, it's like, how are we ever going to, get to a better place? When you hear this, what goes through your mind, and what should we take away from it?
Well, I just think that all of people my age and older should just get out of the way.
Right?
Let them go. But I've really always been saying that. Like, I don't see the entrenched polarization among the students. I haven't seen it. I mean, they have strong views, they disagree on things, but they're not as fixed. And I would also just think, again, to place that political sensibility in a wider context, this is a generation in which all kinds of categories are fluid and malleable and not fixed. I mean, not least gender itself is being questioned by this generation. So we shouldn't be surprised that they're not going to be part of a fixed political tribe their whole lives. The other thing I would say is, hey, how do we get out of this kind of off this treadmill, or how has the United States done this historically? I think it's a two-step process. The first is to just kind of contain the spread of this really malignant and dangerous polarization. And what it's done is it's obviously infested our government and our political life, our parties, but it's not stayed there. It's moved into other institutions. It's gone to churches. It's gone to public institutions. It's even gone into families, like the basic building block of a society. And now you hear that, in a couple weeks' time, you can't have your Thanksgiving dinner because you're not going to like your super woke niece or your Trump uncle or whatever the stereotype is, and you can't get them at the table together. And that's a really bad sign. I mean, that's how the contagion spreads. So first, it just has to be contained. And the way that that's happened in past eras, in the 19th century after the Civil War, or the 20th century in the days of the New Deal, is people went about building social institutions that were not defined by political ideology or partisanship. Like, the building bit was more important than trying to solve the political disagreement. So if that gets into the back seat and you just think about civic life as civic life, or you think about family as family rather than as politics, that's step two, I guess, I'm trying to spit out. So I've always been kind of optimistic and bullish. Last thing I would say is that, circumstances change, and what seem like insurmountable internal divisions melt away all of a sudden when you have a new context, a war, a crisis, an economic depression. And in the grand sweep of history, those things come about and they reconfigure our politics. And I think that the next generation will be ready to reassemble the building blocks when that moment comes.
So John, I know you're chomping at the bit to get in here and talk
This is great. Yeah.
about the solution piece from your perspective as it relates to the media ecosystem, the information system. Go for it.
Well, I loved the use of building, and I haven't really thought of it that way, but that's essentially what we've been, all sides and other organizations in the bridging community, and Manu, who started Bridge USA, and I also know people who worked with him on that, and other organizations are building those institutions. It's not as much a centralized government institution. It's human institutions. Whether you like the Kansas City Chiefs or not, I suspect some people in here might, that's actually an institution of bringing the community together.
Yeah.
And that's valuable. I know, I forget what city it was in the South, but there was a breakdown between the people of color in the community and the police. And they were going to have a town hall and talk about it seriously. And instead, they had a cookout. And the cookout really resolved the problem because you work together as human beings. We're building institutions to make that possible, because the way technology's brought us, the way that the power makers behind the technologies, from politics to big money to, they want us to manipulate us to buy what they want us to buy, or vote a certain way, or act a certain way. And the technology to do that is so much more sophisticated and advanced than anything human society has ever dealt with, that it's a problem. And it's these human institutions that we need that can get through that. And we're building the tools to help you get through that. So like tomorrow, we're having this national roundtable.
Just going to ask you to talk about that, and then I'm going to come in the audience and get your questions.
Oh, yeah, that's great. And this is just an example.
Yeah,
and a lot of different groups are doing this. But so after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which is not the first political assassination, there was, the Democratic legislator was killed not much before that, and there's been, and I actually see the church killings as kind of part of the same thing. Yeah, to me, it's the same thing. But where do people get together when something like this happens? You can get together in libraries, but people are more and more getting together online. So we've been working on for years now with organizations to be able to get together online in a way that's healthy. And so we went to Newsweek and asked them if they want to co-host an event with us. So tomorrow, there are 3 times during the day, there is a national roundtable on political violence, where people can get online and actually see each other. So you actually come not to listen to people on stage, because we're boring, but actually talk with each other. And we do the worst possible thing at the very beginning. We mismatch people in small groups of 6, kind of like the world's worst dating app. We connect you with your opposite. And but we have tested with Living Room Conversations, a big partner of ours. Joan Blade's done brilliant things there, where people ask each other questions and listen to each other. And it's a listening exercise. And we have tested this many times. And after the event, people are more open to different people and different ideas. And they even went back 2 months later, I was mentioning this to Lauren earlier, and they found that that change in their perspective, in their kind of mental attitude of listening to others, remained after 2 months. Not only could you see a change after one conversation, but that change remained. We need these opportunities for people to get together.
So,
yes, we're wired to be tribal. We're wired to get mad at each other. We're also wired to connect. And our society, with the mental health crisis of isolation, is desperate to connect. And we need to get people those, we need to build the opportunities to do that.
And I'm going to say, if you have an opportunity to register and go online and do this tomorrow, please do. I got a chance to do the sneak peek yesterday because I'm a member of the All Sides community and I know people, I know him. So I got to do it yesterday and I was mismatched and we had a wonderful conversation for about an hour and I heard some things that I had not heard before. And I started thinking a little bit differently about certain things. So it's so valuable. I know you're expecting thousands of people to be joining, and maybe some of you will be among them. Okay, questions?
Let me come here first, excuse me.
Within the context of the family, where you come to the point of an impasse and communication is just basically cut off, what are some strategies to help mediate that situation?
Such an important question with Thanksgiving 2 weeks away.
Yes.
I have a story on that from somebody came up to us and something like this. And she came up and said she was my age, and she came up and said that she had been having trouble with her dad because they were so angrily against each other politically. And it was actually about healthcare. And at one point she said she had a different thought. She said, you know what, Dad? Just tell me why you believe the way you do. And she learned that he saw the government taking over healthcare as taking away one of his sacred duties as a father. And when she heard that, it changed, and their relationship changed. A lot of people, when we're worried about holidays, we're thinking about, what am I going to say, or what am I going to bring up to them? And the question should be, what am I willing to hear? The question really starts with us, not with them.
Which is listen to understand and not to refute.
To deeply understand, and that changes everything.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question back here. I'll hold it.
Okay, hi. I'm Elise, and I suppose my question hits on some of the topics you've talked about, which is we know that when people come together in person, whether at the dinner table or at an event like this, people are more connected and often can really find these common grounds. But I think one of the challenges is the attention economy, right? And we know that going back to TikTok algorithms, I work in the entertainment space, I can and do seed out an enormous amount of content, and I can make people think different things about celebrities and change their viewpoints on that. And we know that that's happening obviously on a political scale. So if someone's spending 4 hours a day on TikTok and they're spending 4 hours a week with their family or their friends, et cetera, essentially I suppose how do you address the question of scale in order to actually match what's happening in terms of the divisiveness with the algorithms?
Okay,
Maybe
who wants to answer that?
Brooke or Anna could answer that one. What do you think?
So we've talked about some of our norms of conversation with Bridge, and one of them that we emphasize is that we address the argument, we address the idea rather than the person or the character. Because when someone starts attacking a character is when they're argument is completely lost.
Like, for example, I would never go up to Brooke and I would be like, hey, as a woman, what do you think about this topic? Like, I'm questioning her ideas, not who she is as a person and her identity.
Okay, thank you. What's your question?
Okay, all right. At what level do you find this trusted dialogue actually making progress? Is it on the cultural level, which is subjective and which mobilizes people to actually do things like go out and vote? Or is it policy, which is objective, in which there can be some kind of compromise and dialogue? You know, where is this progress being made today?
Such a great question.
I love that question. Do you want to do it though? Because
And by the
I may
way,
be
he's a
too
friend
eager.
of mine.
You go
Great
first,
question.
and then I'll go.
You get props.
So I love that question, and I actually, what we're doing is actually with both of those things in mind, and I really appreciate you distinguishing between those two. There's one, a skill set of a relationship building. And if you read Jonathan Haidt, if you do all those psychology studies, you know that comes first. And when you look at history and great compromises, you find that these people who compromised actually tended to agree on, did something smaller beforehand very, very often. And so we all have biases. And so part of what we're doing is building tools to make it easier to make better decisions. Part of that tool of making better decisions is actually listening to the other person truly. We're actually talking to a military group that was, and using the example of 1980s hostage rescue, that was terrible. That was before y'all were around. But we tried to rescue hostages in Iran, and it went badly. And there was a bad decision-making where the people on the ground who knew that the helicopters would have all sorts of problems, saying that information didn't get up to the people who are making the decision-making. We actually have technologies today where you can actually have all these different points of view heard. That's actually what we want to do with roundtables, not just have the conversations, but actually pull the information from those decisions so you can bring that different points of view to the decision makers. But that decision maker has to be open to the other ideas. So it's got to be both. In my mind, it's got to be both. And even though I'm a technology guy and started in the information world, it actually has to begin with a relationship. Is where it really makes the biggest difference.
Okay.
If I can jump in on this
Yeah,
one
go
real
ahead,
quick.
Jay.
And it was a great question. I don't think the objective is like policy breakthroughs. I would hope that there could be a shift in culture. But as an educator, I can tell you that the thing that we seek to do is, one student at a time at the individual level. And my answer to the Thanksgiving question, is you can hope for a breakthrough through like an open exchange where both parties are listening, and that would be great. I don't know if that's always going to happen,
and not
but you can
necessarily
hope
over the
for
dinner
that.
table.
But if you don't get that, the other answer to the Thanksgiving question is that you ask yourself, what's more important to me? Is my family more important, or is it more important that I'm, faithful to my partisan allegiances? And I hope that most people would answer it's the family. So there's a sort of deliberation, a consciousness at the individual level that has been lost, but can be regained through a culture that sort of celebrates it and then stigmatizes those who reflexively prioritize polarizing political views over all else.
I think Brooke wanted to jump in here. Did you?
Yeah, I'd also like to hit
you had
this
some
one because
experience
we
with this.
missed this on the tail end of your question about isolationism. Bridge Mizzou, our existence in Bridge USA is completely to foster this in-person discussion, which we've seemed to have lost with the developments. I mean, this is exactly what you are trying to remedy with your roundtable tomorrow, but we hit this in person. We reach out to the students on campus. There's this really cool place called Speaker Circle where a lot of people seem to get yelled at, but we like to quietly reach out to people there and just let them know that it's not a faux pas to talk about politics. It's not something that you should shy away from. It's not something to be scared of. And it's also not something to approach aggressively. It's something that can be a very careful and inquisitive conversation that you don't have to come forward to with every single standpoint of yours firmly.
Love
I
it.
have this horrible feeling that's my phone. Is it somebody else's?
I was worried that was mine.
Okay, ignore my phone.
It's okay. It's all right.
No,
It'll
it's not.
stop.
Oops. Okay, before this, we have a question over here, but before he asks it, I have a totally, oh, good God. A totally irrelevant thing. Do you all remember a couple months ago when the whole country became obsessed by that idiotic couple caught on camera at a Coldplay concert?
Yes.
Both married and they got caught, and became obsessed with that. I think that our obsession, national obsession with that, is part of this dialogue. That stupid couple brought us together because we all disapproved of them. We all made fun of them. There were great jokes about them. I became obsessed with our obsession because they were no matter who you were or who you voted for or who you believed in, we didn't believe in them. So I don't know why I felt compelled to bring up that couple, but
Right.
okay.
That's great.
My daughter is a middle school teacher in a parochial school, teaches social studies. And she posted a few weeks ago this, and she's doing exactly what you guys are talking about doing. My faith informs my political stances. I don't know how it couldn't. I'm always puzzled about how Christians can vote and outwardly support President Trump. If that's you, I would love to have a conversation, not a debate. Not trying to convince anyone of anything, just a conversation to better understand each other. I'll even buy the coffee.
That's very good.
Nice.
So beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for sharing that.
The question is, she did that several weeks ago, hasn't gotten one response. So how do we get to that point where people want to have that conversation?
Yeah.
It's hard. You have to have a certain level of confidence in order to approach other people, and you also just have to acknowledge that you're not perfect, and that can be really hard. You have to go into the conversation knowing that you could be wrong and that they are going to disagree with you. Disagreements are hard. That's why everyone does it behind the phone. Disagreements are hard. It's hard to do that in person, and especially because it's so accessible to do online. Why would anyone want to go in person when they could hide behind the screen? Well, what we do, it's just leading with curiosity. Like I just genuinely want to know, like what you were saying, like about the healthcare thing, about how these deeper mindsets are fueling what we're believing, and those root problems, when you get to the very, very depth of the issue, is where we can build the most connection. But you can't have connection without taking the steps to be vulnerable, and it takes a lot of bravery to do that.
That's why Anna and I are starting, hopefully with the young generation. There's actually been bridge chapters that have reached into high schools, which we are very excited about. Yeah. But it's ingrained into our society that you're not supposed to talk about politics, so we're trying to change
I'm so
that
glad you brought up the high schools, because Jean and I have a high school student from Kalamazoo, Michigan, who reached out to us and asked us if we would please bring a civil dialogues program to her high school campus because they literally cannot talk to each other.
Well, one of the solutions we have for that is we offer incentives for people to come to our meetings, so we provide dinner.
Free food, that always helps.
It's free food, it's dinner and dialogue, so.
Can somebody from Bridges reach out to his daughter?
Yeah, I can
I'm so
offer her
sad that
dinner.
no one has reached out to her. Can you all, where does she live? Of course, that doesn't matter. It's all on social media.
Well, and the other thing I would say is to have her reach out again, maybe do another post, or I'm not sure how she did the outreach, but if it was a social media post or whatever, maybe to do it again and maybe add a little something to it that creates some sort of a semblance of a safe space that I really do want to understand. Sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 times before you get somebody to finally say, okay, I'm going to take the chance. So tell her not to give up. Okay, we have a question here.
I think one thing that would really help a lot is educating people about logical fallacies, because I think people will buy a line that's wrapped around a logical fallacy, and if they could see that the argument doesn't really hold up, they'll see that the facts don't either. And I think our approach is to try to convince someone with facts when it's really values that are kept clashing.
Yeah.
You know, it's not facts. But the thing that I really wanted to say is that I'm thinking about Cambridge Analytica, and you've touched on tech a number of times, but I'd like to go a little bit deeper than that. The algorithms are getting to know us so well, and because they have worked in like the Cambridge Analytica situation, someone's going to see that they're going to keep using that. And I'm really afraid at some point we're going to be living like a Black Mirror episode to where people are not really acting out of their autonomy and volition. You know, they're really acting on these unconscious things, these emotional and political contagion that they're engineering. It's a social engineering.
Can you speak to that, John?
Yeah, and there's so many science fiction warnings of that. Brave New World is essentially that as well. There's so much to say in there. I had to slow down. I think your point about the logic, that leads to media literacy, where we can understand that. But really, if you take experts and you just ask them questions, give them a problem, you take novices, the experts will outperform the novices. But if you take a third group, a mixture, a half of them are experts, a half of them are novices, that third group will outperform the experts 8 or 9 times out of 10. Because experts seem to think we know what's right. And there's all sorts of data that the experts that miss that says that when you really know something, you're actually more likely to fool yourself. So even if you're a fan of Mr. Spock, a Vulcan, and I'm a huge fan, I'll have a Star Trek thing on my office, or on my briefcase over here, we are very good at fooling ourselves. And we wear rose-colored glasses where the evil on the other side is very obvious, but the red flags on our side, they look beige. They don't look that bad. And so you need each other. We need each other. That's the only way society, kind of referring back to Sapiens, has really solved that. And so yes, you need to lean into logic. Yes, we need to lean into relationship, but we need each other, particularly our differences. And about the bravery and the courage, that's what takes the first step in current society. But people who do this a lot, and if you're in like a marriage or a long-term relationships, you find that your relationships get stronger after that. That the reward is really wonderful. And to me, the national healthcare crisis of isolation is absolutely tied to the fear of talking across differences, that they are absolutely together. And so for the love of our humanity, we have to find the opportunities to take that step. And then not through, curiosity is easier than finding your fear, but whether it's courage or curiosity, the thing is the other side is beautiful. And it's wonderful, and the richness of the friendships. Joan Blades is one of my best friends, and we are completely opposite politically. And it is so much richer because of that.
Yeah. Jean, you have a question or from the audience or from the online?
Then I have one online.
Okay.
Let's do this young woman first.
Well, first I want to say how refreshing all this is to be able to sit here together and look each other in the eye and have conversations such as this. And I believe what we all have to say. And I think there are 2 things here, is one, having faith in what the truth is. And that couples up with cynicism. And I think too many of us, and occasionally me, become cynical at what is true. What is true? I mean, there is so much out there. And yes, we try to look at all sides. I read that. I try to look every day at my news source. I look at Fox News source. I look at MS. I look at various news sources. Yet I don't trust the truth anymore. And I think that mires us in a bigger conversation than having civil dialogue at times.
Yeah.
Who wants to tackle that?
You want to take that, Jay?
I just think that's just such a wonderful point. And There's two things going on there, isn't there? On the one hand, it's do we actually believe the facts or do we not? And we don't believe, or we're mistrustful of those who present the facts. And so we have to determine what's real and what's not. And I don't want to minimize that as a problem, but in some ways I think that's the easy first step. We'll determine what's true or not. I think the more difficult thing in our age is that people assemble the facts in a way to advance a particular story or narrative or viewpoint. And then that viewpoint really takes hold. And then when we get new facts, we try to squish it in to what we already believe. And that's just a problem of interpretation, of analysis, of people being literate, reading enough, and being able to think independently for themselves. And that's so much harder to solve than determining what's true and what's not.
And then you throw AI in the mix and,
Yeah.
oh, wow.
As a former reporter, you're doing the right thing. People who just watch Fox, people who just watch MSNBC, people who just read one paper, people who get, God forbid if you get your news off the internet, stop. But you have to have multiple sources. And of course, All Sides is a great example that will provide you the multiple sources. I just have to tell you one shocking thing, fake news. One of my neighbors, every time I see her, insists that the NFL is paying, what's her name, to date Travis Kelce.
What's
And
her
I
name?
cannot convince her it's not true. But we'll talk about that another time. But that, fake news.
Jean,
Okay.
read your question.
You don't want to hear more about
No,
this
because Lou has
controversy?
a question
Okay.
over here, too. Go
Here's
ahead.
a question from somebody online. This is a good one, guys. Have you ever encountered someone you couldn't have a civil dialogue with? How long did you try, and how did it end?
Okay. Anybody want to
Vince,
take
you
that?
wanna-
Do you have an example from Bridge by chance?
Yeah.
Oh, we get ghosted all the time.
And
No.
there's also some people who come to just kind of be trolls, to kind of just offer viewpoints that don't really make sense or go to extremes that are not helping the conversation at all, or who ramble on for very, very long times with only their opinion. But I've had training in moderation, so I do my best to kind of get us back to the topic at hand. But the thing is that if you have to come into it wanting to be respectful. Otherwise, I don't know who's going to want to have that conversation with you.
So I guess the answer is there are some people that you feel that you cannot have a civil dialogue with unless they want to come into it with the best of intentions.
You can't always convince people to have an open mind.
And that's okay. We don't have to convince 80% of the country to suddenly get along and sing Kumbaya and want to get it. I remember before the last presidential election, I think it's Mike Wallace who said, 6% of the people in 6 states are going to determine the outcome. And when you talk to experts in movements, they say about 3.5% of a populace have to get engaged. And when that happens, that movement succeeds. Culture changes, policy changes. That's a small percentage. And being a technology guy, I see the adoption curve. That's after innovators to early adopters, but just the very beginning. That's a very doable number. You can have the vast majority of people still lost in their herd mentality of partisanship. We just need to enable enough people like this to be the difference makers.
The group Indivisible is really focused on that 3.5% number, understanding that that's when culture starts to change and shift.
First of all, I want everybody to know that I play golf, believe it or not. So one time, about a week ago, I'm playing golf with a good friend of mine, and we did talk politics. He invited 2 people that he had grown up with. And he said at the beginning to all of us, listen, there's one rule. We won't talk politics. And to me, I'm always open to discuss anything you want anyway. He knew it. But I knew he knew his friends may go off the end of the golf course. So he just struck it down. Now, did I do the right thing? Just say, okay, you're the host. I'm going to do it your way. Did I do the right thing? Okay.
By not engaging in politics.
I did what he asked to do. I didn't talk politics, and they didn't either.
And sometimes what people will do too is say, okay, we're going to talk politics for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then it's off the table.
Yeah.
It's off the table.
Life is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
be open. You're going to meet different people with different attitudes, and how do you close
Okay, honey, this is my husband, okay?
I was going to say,
He's as brilliant as she is, by the way. He really is.
Go, Jean.
We have a Bible study group, and after it's all over, we're going to be spending 45 to an hour discussing politics and our views. As we, as we went around the first time, we just kind of talked where we were, and one of my dear friends stated, "I'm a conservative, and I know I am because the only news I will listen to is Fox." And I want to know, how do I have, okay, that was our daughter that had that wonderful thing on Instagram. She didn't take after me because my first thought was, we have nothing in common. You know, we have no universe in common. But what would be a loving response to that?
You do have a universe in common. You were both at a Bible study together. Yes. And frankly, that's a hell of a lot more important than any of the crap that people are covering on the news, just speaking personally. Not to, but yeah.
Politically, we have.
Yeah, and it's okay. And what Joan says frequently, like a friend of hers, she's very liberal, grew up in Berkeley, and a friend of hers from Utah, very, very conservative Mormon, they became great friends. And he was not interested in the environment at all, and that's Joan's main topic. And because he just thought that was like the left's kind of end of story narrative. It's like everybody, if you don't believe in God, you have like a cross, a God-shaped hole in your heart that you fill up with something else. And they were like, okay, the seculars just filled in that and put that in there. But he started to care about the environment because he cared about her. And she became very interested in things that he became interested in that she'd never even heard of before. So, you know, start with faith in your wonderful case, or with the people. That's where it all begins.
And I'd just say the more important thing than changing someone's views or even having a heartfelt exchange about your political views is that you're part of a social formation that is, ideologically diverse. I mean, that's what's most lacking. If we had more of those, we wouldn't be where we are today. So don't punish yourself. I think you've done a great job there. And I just say one thing about, we keep talking about the Chiefs. Arrowhead Stadium, and I mean this, it is, first, it's the most racially integrated place in Kansas City on a Sunday. I don't think there's any question about it. And it's not just that there's black fans and white fans together, there's integrated groups of fans. How often do you see that in Kansas City? And I would also hazard a guess that it is the most ideologically or politically integrated space in this town on a Sunday. And I took my daughter to the game, the Monday night game, the good game, the one we won, the fun game. And you're just walking through the tailgate sections, and you see so many different groups of people that would never be in proximity to one another. That's one big macro example, but if we could have more of those sorts of integrated social experiences, and that's what like the United States used to be like. Not everything was sorted by politics. Your workplace, your trade union would be politically diverse. Your church probably would. Your neighborhood, your social organizations, all of those things have sort of chipped away and become politically segregated. So that's the thing that we have to guard against. So stay in that Bible club and keep it diverse.
Don't lose a moment's sleep of not agreeing with her politically. It's not the most important thing. Now, you never would hear that on TV or anybody else is telling you to read their news because what happened yesterday is the most important thing that's happened in the history of society, and all of politics is going to change because of it, which is kind of what the different talking heads are saying right now. Don't buy into that BS. Our relationships and your group, your Bible study is far more important than any of that stuff.
I'd like to applaud you and your group for being so open to talk about politics.
Yeah.
And I would like you to remind them that although you cannot separate your particulars from your politics, you can't assign certain particulars to certain political parties. There are no morals that define a certain political party.
You are so wise.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's very
So
good.
wise, both of you, wise beyond your years. Seriously, I'm so blown away by the two of you. Yeah, aren't you? I mean, seriously. We're going to be okay as long as we have young people like this leading the way. Go, Jean.
Okay, speaking of young people.
Yes.
Our next question, come over here. I want everyone to see who's asking this question. How old are you?
I'm 11.
You're going to save our world.
Okay.
No pressure.
So if we can get people to show up to these, like talks or whatever, and so if we can get them to actually show up, how do we respond if they don't hear our opinion, if they don't listen?
That is a great question to people worried about. Go ahead.
I kind of asked them, like,
Great question.
do you want to know why? Do you want to know more about me? Do you want to know more of who I am? I want to know everything about you. If we're having this conversation and we're connecting, I want to understand why you have these beliefs. I want to understand what experiences have gotten you here. I don't know. I'm just.
I have, along the same line, but I have a slightly added thing. It's like, if they're not listening to you, the response is to listen to them even more. Mm-hmm. And people aren't required to listen to you. Listening to somebody is a great gift. And so everybody says, I want to be heard. The thing to do is start with, I want to listen. And after that other person sees you listening to them, they'll begin to listen to you. Maybe not immediately, and some may never come along, but when you're not being heard, listen to them more. That's the way to go.
I love that. So unless we have any other questions, I'm going to ask each one of our panelists to leave us with a closing thought. Jay, I'm going to start with you.
Well, thanks everyone for coming out. Thanks to the Kansas City Public Library. I mean, I guess been talking about institutions and how important those are to a healthy society. Libraries have been from really the late 19th century onward. We have a wonderful one here in Kansas City, and this is exactly the kind of space that I'm talking about, where we can actually get together. There's books here. I mean, don't forget about there's books and opportunities to read, but a place where you would encounter different ideas and different people than you would if you didn't come. So shout out to libraries.
Yes,
That'll be my last
yes,
comment.
thank you. Thank you so much. John.
I completely agree, and I want to thank you, Linda, because of you, I've been able to meet different people saying different things, and it's really remarkable. And whether they're like a presidential library or a public library, these are special moments. Don't underestimate the influence you have on your time and the people you know. It's far greater than we think. Every interaction has a bigger impact and a bigger opportunity than we recognize. So I appreciate that you give me that opportunity to do that with different people here. And
You're on speed dial. I will be calling you again.
I appreciate
Just saying. Okay, Brooke.
I'm going to echo their thanks for this opportunity, but I would also like to leave you with a reminder that these are not the only spaces in which political conversation is held. And at the smallest moments of your life are the most revealing to those around you. So be intentional in every moment that you carry yourself.
Love it.
My little tidbit, it is so uncomfortable to challenge the beliefs that you've held for so long that are so strong. But connecting with other people and learning their beliefs is the basis of humanity. And I think that's the most important thing that we can do today.
How about a round of applause for our panelists? Wow. Wow. I know I would like to echo our thanks to Carrie and your team for hosting us. This is our third time here this year. This feels like home now. So we are so honored to have this space, to have these really important conversations. Before I let Jean say one last word, because I know she wants to say something.
Yes, I do.
I know you do. I know you do. I just want to remind you that the QR code, if we can put the QR code back up on the screen, please do take a moment to do the post-event survey. We really read everything. Our goal is to get better at this, to do even more forums like this on a variety of topics, and it will give you an opportunity to give us your honest feedback. We will read it and we will take it to heart, because we will always want to continue doing the best thing that we can for the community.
I, of course, want to thank Carrie and the library, but also the Kinder Institute. You guys have been incredible partners. And Linda and I started this conversation having lunch one day. You know, what can we do to make a difference? And that's how we started, over lunch, and we weren't sure what we were doing. And now here we are partnering with the Kansas City Public Library, with the Kinder Institute for Constitutional Democracy. We're in conversations with others. So don't ever think you can't make a difference. And President Bush founded something called Points of Light, which is about volunteerism. And what he always said is, you know, everybody gets intimidated because how can I change the world? Well, you can change the life of your next door neighbor. You can change the life of the guy who lives across the street. And then maybe one day you wake up and you've changed the world. You started by coming tonight. You could be home watching something stupid on TV. So thank you for coming, and we love being here.
Yes, please stay engaged with us. Thank you. Be safe going home tonight.